Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Just Make It Pretty podcast. Today, we are talking about the buyer experience gap. We have seen builders in 2025 and in 2026 investing more and more into tech, but the buyer journey and the buyer experience still feels disconnected. So, we're going to be digging into why that is and why build buyers now are expecting an Amazon level transparency, but builders are not able to offer that. And one of the main reasons is that we are operating in silos and there is still a gap with tech integration. So if you are interested in changing your buyer journey and seeing where builders are missing out and what tech can actually do to support that experience, then this episode is going to be for you and you're going to love it. So please stick around and let's get into it. Welcome to the Just Make It Pretty podcast, the marketing and mindset show for home builders and beyond. I'm your host, Sarah Haynes, and around here we go beyond pretty pictures and we get honest about what's working, what's not, and what it really takes to build better brands, better experiences, and better teams. You'll find creative ideas, practical strategies, and conversations that actually matter. I'm so glad you're here. Now let's get started. All right, everybody. So let's get into this topic today because I am super excited to really dive into this buyer experience gap and how marketing, technology, and reality really collides in our industry. So I have brought in an amazing guest today. So I would love it if you all would welcome Krista Hartford with me. She is the Senior Digital Product Manager over at Trumark Homes. And she shared a little bit with me before this episode. She's incredible, and I can't wait to hear all of the amazing things that she's going to share. So please welcome Krista with me. Thank you, Krista, for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
I'm excited too. I would love to hear a little bit about you, about your role there at Trumark Homes, and how did you get into this industry? This is like my favorite question for everybody because I feel like everyone comes in from different areas into the home building industry. So tell me about yourself.
Yeah, okay. I am a digital product manager at Trumark Homes, and really my job is just to make sure that all of our digital tools and our systems come together to really create a better experience, not only for our customers, but for our internal teams as well. And I think it's a really interesting position and one that I really enjoy because I get to sit at the intersection of marketing, sales, technology, operations, and strategy. And I'm responsible for keeping all of that connected, whether that's through our website or our CRM, marketing automation, and of course, our homeowner app, Live True, which we launched about a year ago. Day to day, I am working with teams just to understand their needs and where their bottlenecks are and where things are breaking down, translating that to the tech teams that we're working with, and prioritizing which systems we either want to invest in and build or what we want to improve. And a big part of my job is just asking constantly, is this working? And if it's not, then I figure out a way to fix it. And again, that goes for our home buyers, our homeowners, and also our internal team members as well. As for how I got here, like many of your guests that I've heard before, I definitely did not set out in home building. I spent most of my 20s actually in Europe and Italy, and then decided to come home to Southern California. And honestly thought I was going to be a publicist in LA, but I got in contact with a recruiter who placed me at a marketing agency who work with the home building industry. And I completely fell in love with not only the home building industry, but the digital side of the business as well. And that kind of shaped my career during COVID, where we really saw that big digital shift within the industry as a whole. So I've worked on the agency side and then went in-house. I've worked with 2 national builders as a digital product manager and as a marketing manager. That gave me a lot of exposure to larger processes and broader business strategy, both on the corporate and the division level. And those opportunities ultimately led me to Trumark, where I get to work every single day with my dream team.
That's so cool. And I was listening to your description of your job, and I absolutely love this because there's so many smaller builders out there that don't have the resources to have a dedicated person in that role. But it's so important because asking that question, like you said, is this actually working, can make such a huge difference. And you actually get to improve so many things that a lot of people, I feel like we get into like our routines and it's, yeah, that doesn't work, but that's just the way we've done it for all this time. So you just go with it. So I'm so excited for you to be here and share your insights and all of your knowledge. So thank you so much for being willing to come on and do that with us.
Yeah. Thank you again for having me.
So I want to talk about what this experience gap and how technology plays into that. I think the most logical place to start is with the buyer. And I know I've had a couple guests on that, and we've talked about how like the buyers have changed recently. And like in the last 10 years, people are buying homes differently. They're making decisions differently. So I'd love to hear from your aspect when you look at today's buyers and compare them to like buyers of a few years ago. What feels the most different to you?
Yeah, I think that the biggest shift that I'm seeing is that buyers are simultaneously more informed and also a lot less patient. And I think that combination really creates a different dynamic for us because before they're even stepping foot into a sales office, they're already researching, putting in hours of time just looking at our website and our reputation. So by the time that they walk into that sales office, they're not starting from zero. They're honestly validating us. And the sales process is fundamentally changed because of that. But the biggest shift, and I think that this is something that we're still catching up to, is really just the expectation of real-time visibility and transparency. Amazon and Uber and DoorDash and all of these companies have, in my opinion, completely rewired what people consider a normal experience now. I can track a $15 burrito from the restaurant to my front door. You can even buy and build a car online, right? But then that same person is walking into a sales office to buy a home, probably the biggest purchase of their life, and they sign their contract and then they're waiting a week or two for an email update. And I think that gap is a little bit jarring. And I honestly feel like today's home buyer really wants to feel like a participant and have that experiential element to the home buying process. And they don't want to feel like they're just sitting there on the sidelines waiting for something to happen.
Yes. No, I totally agree. And not only are we like all being conditioned to watch every order and to be able to track things and have that transparency, we're also expecting that instant gratification.
Mhm.
And so I feel like we go on these like really high highs and then we're like really just trying to keep that, right? Okay, I want an instant upstate now. And then I want to be able to look and see something change now. And it's interesting how our brains are literally just changing and from like TikTok and things like that. Like we're just so used to like things changing all the time really fast. And home building is not necessarily a really super quick like process. This is a big job, but you pair that with how much money is being invested and how this is such a big purchase. I think
Mhm.
it adds to that like anxiety level that people are trying to quell.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you look at the buyer journey, it's not linear, right? It's not
Yeah.
linear process anymore. I know for us, like we've done our research at Trumark and a lot of the customer journey, it looks like a tornado and then up and down like a roller coaster. And like the emotion, to your point, plays a huge part of this customer experience and the expectation from the buyer today.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a mistake for us in marketing and to think about it as a linear journey. I think when buying a home was newer and even just marketing 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we thought about things more in like these steps and every person was going to take these steps. And it was easier to track when it was like they saw you in this newspaper ad and then they had to call you, right? Like we could track like individual steps. But now there's so many different ways that people find us. There's so many different ways that they interact and learn about our company before they even make that initial contact, that you're right. Like this is not like just an easy, simple path anymore. And it's fascinating to me because I feel like even the spot in which the buyer decides this is the home builder I'm going to go with has changed. So I'm interested to hear like your perspective. At what point do you feel like the buyer makes that decision? Yes, this is the home. This is the builder I'm going to go with.
Honestly, I think that they're making that decision a lot earlier than most of us realize. Again, like by the time someone's even reaching our sales office or is talking to someone, they've already shortlisted us, right? They've already got to that point where they know what they're looking for, they know what they want. So that decision isn't happening at the sales office anymore. It's happening during the research phase, often before any human interaction whatsoever. If you think about how you choose a restaurant, right? You're not walking in blind to a restaurant. At least I don't. Most of us don't. Um, you're going on Google, you're looking at photos, you're reading the all of the reviews. Like maybe you've looked at the menu or I look at the menu. But by the time you show up, like you've already decided whether that restaurant was worth your time. And I feel like home buyers are doing the same thing, just with a lot more at stake, right? Going to our website and they're reading our reviews and they're watching our content and they're driving to our communities and they're really painting this picture of who we are as a builder before anyone from our team is actually speaking to them. And I think that what that means for us is that our experience has to start much earlier than the model. The first impression isn't the sales agent or that sales office anymore. It's the digital experience. It's what they find on you in Reddit at 9 o'clock at night on a Tuesday, right? And if that digital experience isn't matching the quality of what we're building, then we've already lost ground before that conversation even gets started. So
Yeah.
brand reputation is so important. The digital tools that we're creating and utilizing on our website, it's no longer just a digital brochure. It's a sales tool, essentially.
Yeah, it's so interesting because that process is so important, but it's one of those things that it's like hard to put that on a spreadsheet. And you say there's not really a lot of like trackable things yet, but we know that it happens and we know that it works. So it's one of the things in marketing that I think is it's the hardest things to advocate for because we're going to put a ton of effort into this, but we're not going to see results for it for a while because it compounds. And that's the behind the scenes experience that we're not a part of. So it's something that I'm super passionate about talking about because I think it's one of those places that because we can't put it on a spreadsheet, because we can't like line up like this is how much this ROI was. It's one of the things that like other people that make decisions in companies, our leadership and things like that, it's easy to just be like, let's not focus on that and let's work on these ads because that has this immediate gratification, this immediate ROI. And I'm a big believer in, yes, focus on the ads, but also focus on this organic side and making sure that your buyer journey is connected from that very first touch point and really understanding what are those first touch points? What are the possibilities of those even being? I definitely agree with you. And I think it's funny because your example of the restaurant is so true. I won't go to a restaurant or anywhere if
Mhm.
one, I can't book online, and two, I don't know what the parking situation is going to look like. And that's what our buyers want too. Like they want to make their appointment, they want to get all the information they need, and they want to know what the parking's going to look like. So let's
Yeah.
not unintentionally make confusion or anxiety around that process. Let's make it as simple as possible and just guide them right through.
Yep. Exactly.
So one of the things that I think is really interesting is some of those like breakdowns that we see, right? Like we know that there are gaps in this process, and I think every company has them and they may be different for each company, but I think every buyer journey has a gap somewhere that we can be working on. So I'm curious to see what you feel like some of the biggest breakdowns in that buyer journey are right now, probably unintentionally by these builders.
Yeah, definitely. To me, without question, it's the contract to close phase. It's the longest phase of the journey and the most emotionally charged portion of that journey. And like I sit there and I think about the energy that's leading up to that contract point, right? There's consistent interaction, the sales team's engaged. It's really exciting and the buyer feels really part of all of those pieces coming together. And then they sign their contract and everything slows down a little bit. So suddenly all of a sudden those touch points become a lot less frequent. The updates are less specific. And at the same time, they're managing their household. They've made decisions that can't be undone. And they're waiting there without a very clear picture of an understanding of what's going on. And I think that breakdown happens not because builders don't care, but I think there's just this gap during that handoff from sales to construction to customer care. Sales has done their job, construction's focused on building the home, and then the buyer is sitting there in the middle. Who do I reach out to? Where am I
Yeah,
in the
me
phase?
too.
And I think that that is one area that I think we as home builders really need to take a look and invest in.
I think too, like we put so much thought and intentionality into that sales process, and our sales teams here in the building industry are so good at making those initial emotional connections and tying in why you're moving and what can we do to make this house like your dream. But we forget that after that process is done, the buyer then has a lot of other stressful things going on. If they're selling their current home, if they're moving across the country, if they're having to change schools for their kids, or they're moving somewhere away from a job and getting a new job. There's a ton that happens in moving, in like buying a home and moving there. And they have all of that anxiety, which I also think can bleed into, oh, did I just make a big mistake? And it heightens the emotion of the construction and like the build process as well. And that's all external to us. But I
Mhm.
think we can make a difference for that buyer by giving those regular updates and being more transparent and having a lot of communication, because then at least there's one part of that super stressful situation that isn't overwhelming for them. And I was just thinking about that because I'm doing that process right now. And I realized that I was like, I don't think I can sell a house and buy a house and work full time and be a mom and take care of the oil change on my car. And I just can't do all of it at once. And it all happens. And so I have a new understanding of what that all means and how that feels. So I think it's something that us builders have to think about as well.
Yeah, I like to call it the invisible middle because from the buyer's perspective, a lot seems to be happening that they're not
Yeah.
seeing, right? So even when things are operationally great and everything's moving along, they're not seeing it. So we're pulling permits and we're ordering materials and we're doing inspections and we're doing all of these things. But if the buyer doesn't see any of that, they're just going to see a lot of nothing, right? They're going to see a foundation and then they wait. So we have all the information. We have the milestone schedules and the timelines and the updates, but it all lives internally in our systems and in our meetings and in our conversations that these buyers are never part of. So they're sitting there filling the gaps themselves. And I think that's human nature to do. And so
Yep.
when people have no information and like they're not assuming the best, then that's when the anxiety takes over and where that trust erodes. And it's not a single dramatic moment, but it happens quietly over weeks and weeks. But silence is not neutral for a buyer, and it's just uncertainty with nowhere to place it.
Yes, silence is not neutral. I love that. I think it's so easy for us too, because we have a lot of those tasks and like we are following along, but some of those things aren't pretty to send to
Yeah.
a buyer. Oh yeah, we did your plumbing and we got your septic, whatever. It's just not sexy to talk about. But so we have to figure out a way to have those updates and to keep people informed and keep the experience positive. Because I feel like also a lot of builders underestimate how much that customer experience actually impacts whether that buyer is going to refer you to somewhere else or what your reputation is. There's a lot of just in your area, people talk, and those are things that you also can't track. And so your reputation kind of hinges on what happened after the sale. And that's people are going to share that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is the biggest piece to this, right? Those referrals, that's a source of revenue for every builder. That's an untapped like a
Yeah.
marketing funnel. And if we're able to tap into those buyers, like even their behavior as like a referred buyer, they've already bought in to the trust of the builder because of the fact that they trust and believe this other person, whether it's a family or friend. And those buyers move quicker, they're more likely to close and less likely to cancel. So there's a lot of just untapped potential, I think, in those referred buyers.
Yep. And it's one of those things too, like you can get someone's experience can be so positive in the beginning and they can be saying great things about you. And then if something happens further along in the process, that can switch. And I feel like the switch of I thought they were great, but then this happened is more powerful than just the, oh, it was wonderful or oh, it was terrible. Be that like change means a lot to people. They're like, oh,
Mhm.
because they like, ooh, the bait and switch. Like they get cynical in their mind.
In our industry, like product differentiation is very few and far between.
Yeah.
If you've gone to one model, you've gone to all of them. And so in a like a world where product differentiation is scarce, it's the experience that's really going to make us set us apart.
Oh yeah, so true. And so many builders are trying to differentiate themselves with like the smallest things. And like I really feel like what you said, if you've gone through one model, you've gone through them all. It's so true. Like these homes are not different enough that it's going to make that big that you can't make the decision just on that nowadays. So it's that bought in trust. And if you're like, oh yeah, no, my best friend bought a house here, you're definitely going to trust that person more than, the other guy you found on Google.
Yep, absolutely.
So let's talk about how we can capture some of this information and communicate it. What are some ways that we can increase that experience? Because I feel like builders now, like we have a lot of data on our buyers. We have a lot of data on the homes and what process they're in or what stage they're in. But I don't feel like a lot of builders use it. So I'd love if you could talk about the data, CRM, AI, like however you see that process working internally for the builder.
Yeah, absolutely. I think most builders aren't data poor, they're insight poor. The data exists. There's behavioral data in the CRM, there's sentiment data in the surveys, engagement data in the marketing platforms, operational data. All of that information exists, but it rarely talks to each other. And I think what ends up happening is that data just becomes this reporting function instead of an actual decision-making function. And it gets pulled together and it gets summarized and shared with leadership or different teams, and then it's filed away until the next month. And I don't think the disconnect is really necessarily a technology problem. At its core, I think it's more of a mindset problem. There's definitely still a tendency to treat data as something that we look at after the fact to help us understand something rather than to be looking at it in the moment, trying to shape what happens next. And that shift, I think, is really significant because it really does change how we're building systems, what we're deciding to build, and how we're structuring our teams. And even what question is it that I'm actually trying to answer, or what am I trying to solve here? In my opinion, I think the real opportunity is using data to get ahead of the experience instead of just documenting it. If our data is showing that buyers at a certain stage are consistently disengaged, maybe there's fewer app opens or less response to communication or lower survey scores, that's just not an interesting data point, right? It's signaling that something in the phase isn't working, and it's telling us that in real time while we still have a chance to do something about that. And I think that's why I love digital so much is that we're able to shift and change so quickly and test things out and see if it works in real time. So if buyers in that experience haven't received an update in 10 days and we see that they're more likely to call us with concerns, then our system should be flagging that for us automatically, right? Not just surfacing it on a report 3 months after it's happened. And I think the builders who are going to win on experience aren't going to be the ones that have the most data, but they're going to be the ones that have connected their data to action that they're taking. So
Yeah.
people who are building those systems and those workflows and who are turning insight into proactive response rather than a retrospective one.
So I feel like everything that you've said is so interesting. And I think that a lot of builders are looking for this solution. So what you shared is leads right into our next topic, which is the Live True app that you have implemented there at Trumark. So could you walk me through the problem you were trying to solve and the reason behind that app?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to be super straightforward about this because I think it really reframes our whole story around Live True. We weren't building Live True because our experience was broken. Our survey scores were strong and our buyers were happy, but we built it because we recognized that good on a survey isn't going to be good enough in the future. So the real
Yes.
question wasn't how are we going to fix a trust problem? It's how do we strengthen the trust that we have in a way that moves that needle long term? And that's through referrals, reviews, and of course, repeat buyers. Those metrics compound over time, and they are almost entirely about how that experience is feeling to our homeowners, not whether the home was delivered on time or if it was pretty, but whether the home buyer felt informed, supported, and genuinely taken care of throughout that journey. So when we looked at honestly at the contract to close experience, even with those really strong scores, the gaps were visible to all of us. Our buyers were lacking visibility into construction progress. Communication was very reactive rather than being proactive. And then internally, we were definitely misaligned between teams, which created inconsistency, even when everyone was trying to do the right thing at the right time. And none of it was catastrophic, right? But we did see it as an opportunity. And so we worked with the foundation team to build Live True, specifically to close some of those gaps. The design and the thought process was really straightforward. We wanted to give buyers visibility into construction. We wanted to give teams tools to be able to communicate with the buyers proactively and transparently, and then also create a shared single source of truth for everyone to have access to. So with the Live True app, buyers are able to track their construction milestones in real time. They get photo updates and video updates through the app that makes it a little bit more personalized for each buyer. They can message their teams. They even get action items, so it tells them what's coming up and what they need to expect. And this year, I'm really excited. We're actually adding a warranty portal. So homeowners, even after they close their home, they can submit and track all of their warranty requests without having to go try to figure out where it is that they're supposed to go or who they're supposed to go to. And that just extends the relationship beyond closing and signals that the Trumark experience doesn't end at the time you get your keys. And
Yeah.
I think that's the real goal, right? Not just a buyer who's closing happy, but one who gets to go back to their friends, leave a review, and come back again when they're ready to buy. Again, in an industry where what you build looks a lot like your competitor, the experience is going to be the differentiator. And Live True definitely was how we wanted to make that real.
Yeah. Shout out to Foundation. I had Brett from Foundation on the podcast last season, but his episode was really interesting. And we talked about that same thing, like how that process can be built out. And I love that now we get to have you on to be like, we did it and it worked. But one of the things that I even asked him, Brett, this as well, when he gave me a tour of their application and their backend, I was like, what kind of like resistance might you see from the team? Because I know just with what we do at Share Drive and like what I've worked with builder clients, anytime you're like, oh, we're gonna have this new process or we're gonna have this new technology, everyone kind of is, oh, but that's gonna be scary and that's gonna change this. And internally it can just be a struggle. So I wonder, like for you, how was that process of implementing that? And did you see any resistance internally?
Oh, yeah. The resistance for any new tool, I would be a liar if I said anything different. Resistance is real, and I think it's understandable too. And that's part of my job is trying to understand where these bottlenecks are and like what it is that our teams need in order to roll this out and to roll it out successfully. There are two kind of parts to this. And the first one was predictable, right? It's people saying, oh, it's another system, it's another thing that I have to do, another place for me to have to update. And that was personal cost, right? Personal cost of time and management and even tech, like just understanding technology. You still have a
Yes.
lot of people that aren't really comfortable using it. And then the second wave of this pushback was a little bit more subtle, and it came from people who have already created their own systems and their own processes and have their own way of communicating and their own workarounds that previously they weren't as transparent as they are now with an app like LiveTrue. And of course, like anytime that you're introducing a new tool, you're basically telling them that what they're doing isn't the right way. And I think it lands differently depending on the person. For example, there we have some team members who absolutely love new technology and want to jump in, they want to test everything, they want to give feedback. And then you have those who are less likely to jump in there and play around and give feedback. But internally, we stopped leading with what Live True was, and we started leading with what it helped reduce for our sales teams and our construction teams. So there were fewer repetitive buyer questions, fewer phone calls, fewer people showing up on site when they were expected. And I think that when the conversation really became about what people were getting back in terms of time and clarity and fewer interruptions, then that's when the resistance softened. But I do have to say, with any sort of like change or adoption, the best thing to do is to have champions. And I think that piece is really critical. Like leadership buy-in sets the expectation, but it doesn't really drive that like day-to-day behavior on its own. It's like when you see a peer, someone who's doing the same job as you or who has the same struggles as you, and they're the ones coming to your team and saying, "This is awesome. I love to use this. Look at these cool graphics that I've created." People tend to buy into it a little bit easier, I think.
I love what you said about like showing the benefits basically to your team and showing how it's going to actually save them time and save
Mhm.
them effort and things. I think that's everyone's biggest fears. They're like, this is going to be harder for me now. You're making my job harder. So really laying out like, no, this is supposed to be here to help you. This is a new tool, definitely helps. And I think too, like once you get far enough in the process and you've launched it and you start seeing the results and that your customers like it and they're getting good feedback, that also helps. But sometimes that can take a little bit. Did that play any part for you? Like the increased happiness of your customers, did that actually help with the integration and with your team? And what do you feel like contributed to those effects?
Yeah. One thing I do want to say, like for me, a customer is not just a home buyer, it's our internal team too. And I just want to share a quick story because it always makes me smile. But like the moment that told me that we were gaining momentum and that people were actually buying into this app was actually at one of the holiday parties I attended for Trumark this year. And I met this beautiful girl in the bathroom, and I was talking to her and we walked out, and her husband just happened to be on the construction team, and I said, "Oh, do you have any feedback about the Live True app? How is it working for you?" He was like, "Thank you so much for this tool. It
Oh,
has reduced the phone calls. People aren't blowing up my phone at 2 o'clock in the morning, wondering what's going on. They're not showing up unannounced on the job site." And for him, it wasn't a buyer experience initiative. For him, it was like his quality of life has gotten better because of the fact that we've introduced this tool that provides so much more transparency to our buyers.
oh, that's so
I
amazing.
know.
I love that. Like, what a like huge validating moment. Yes. And all that work, like it did matter.
Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't easy, that's for sure. There were definitely hiccups and things that, like, in retrospect, you probably would change. But yeah, those are the little moments when you get those comments from construction and sales telling you that they are really enjoying this product. That just makes my job worth it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's such a good point too. There any kind of implemented technology or anything that you're changing with your company, let the person know that's working on it, like how it's working for you. Let them know the positive side too. Because there's a lot of things, especially in marketing, that we do and put so much effort in that people don't see for quite a long time sometimes. Just getting that feedback. I'm so happy that you were able to get that because I know, especially with like when we implement like CRMs or something, like it takes a while for anyone to be like, this is great.
Oh, for sure. For sure. It's
Yeah.
hard. And to your point, and if anybody from Trumark out there is listening to this right now, please send feedback. We want to hear from you and
Yeah.
we want to know what you guys are going through and how we can fix it. And sometimes when we fix one thing, we realize there's this whole other thing that needs to be re-examined and looked at.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm sure all the Trumark people are going to be watching this podcast to support you. Hopefully your inbox is just going to be flooded now with all the great things about the app. It definitely sounds like a really instrumental tool that you're going to be able to use for a long time. And I really feel like this is the future of what home building is going to move to. We have to start innovating and catching up with the rest of the world and the rest of the buying experiences that our buyers are already enjoying. I think more and more builders are going to be moving to adopt things like this. And so it's really cool to see someone who's done it and it's working great and, it's making a difference. So hopefully that will spur the industry along sometimes because we all know this can be a slow moving industry sometimes. But I love to see it. I'm like so excited because I think just in 2026 alone, like I felt so much more momentum towards adding new technologies and researching new things. And people are much more willing to try things right now. So hopefully that's not just me, but like I feel it.
No, absolutely, especially with AI, right? And I think that it's an important topic to bring up, especially when we're talking about like customer experience and technology. I think that for AI to work well, we have to start using it in a way that's not removing the like human point or like the human
Yeah.
interaction. And we were really intentional when we were building the Live True app and being cautious of what we were automating versus what the sales team or the construction teams or customer care were responsible for. I think that it brings it to a whole new level when, yes, these processes like adding a new buyer or updating a construction milestone are automated, but the messages, the personalized like video walkthroughs of someone's home, like AI works best when it's making good people more effective, not when it's being asked to completely replace the human experience.
Yeah. I think apps like this do a really good job of allowing you to automate things and use AI to make you better and more productive, but it doesn't take away the experience of the buyer, right? They don't see that, oh, they just like took a task that used to take an hour and now it took 10 minutes. Like that doesn't have to matter to them. And they still get that like really curated, I keep saying experience, but that's what it is, like that curated journey. So I love that. I just did a podcast about AI specifically, and that's what we dug into too, was like you can't get replaced by AI unless you give it permission to do it. Like you basically out give yourself an out of a job if you're using AI that way. AI is not going to just do that to you. So us as home builders, I think it's really important that we use our technologies, like you said, to make the buyer's experience better.
I think that, yes, there are like good ways that we can be using it in terms of content creation, but I think that the most impactful area that we're going to see AI being used in home building is really on the data side. It's already changing like how we're approaching like pricing and market intelligence and absorption rate and market conditions. And I think that kind of research, it used to take so many weeks to pull together. And by the time it actually landed on a decision maker's desk, the market shifted. And so AI is helping us synthesize all of that information so much faster and allows us to be making those more confident decisions on pricing and pacing and incentive while that window is still open. So again, AI is so new and I am certainly not like the AI expert of all AI experts, but I think data is like the one place that I want to dig into a little bit deeper to understand how that
Yes.
can help us.
Yeah, it speeds up so much of those like repetitive tasks. There's a lot of just analysis needed to go through that, and it can cut down the time so much. And it makes perfect sense too, with basically we're just saying bring in tools that are actually going to enhance what you're doing, shut down any silos that you have in your team, connect your buyer with what's actually happening on their home. And that can be done with, I think there's so many opportunities, right? Like you guys did it through this Live True app. I know there's a lot of new service providers out there that are bringing in new tools and all the time, but a lot can be done right in your CRM, right? With just AI that you have available to you right now. There's so many opportunities right now, which is just so exciting. Like I feel like the barrier to be able to implement some of this stuff is really lowered, which I think is why we're seeing more and more builders being open to it and like able to implement these type of things.
Yep. And now you're seeing like AI generation of interior renderings
And they're
and floor
actually
plans.
good.
Yeah,
They actually look good. And I was like, oh my gosh.
I kept getting targeted on Meta, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to look at this. It's interesting because I think that a lot of these tools, like, yes, like we still need to do a lot more research on all of them. And it's not just a throw it in and see what happens kind of thing. It does take a lot of work and strategy in order to have the renderings turn out that great. But it's an interesting time
It
across
is.
so many different platforms and channels. And even just when you're searching different things on an e-commerce site, they're using AI in order to like catalog the things that you are actually searching for and serving that up in different touch points throughout your digital journey. So
Thank you, Krista, so much for being here with me today and sharing all of this. And I hope that all of our listeners can use some of these insights and really just dig into where your buyer journey has those breakdowns and how you can fix them, whether that's with technology or maybe just an internal process. There's so many options available. Krista, if anybody wanted to reach out to you or have any questions, how would people be able to follow you or reach out?
yeah, absolutely. So you can search me or look for me on LinkedIn under Krista Hartford, or you can email me at khartford@trumarkco.com. And really, I love talking about all of this stuff. So if anything resonated with you, or if you're working through something similar and just want to chat with someone who's been in the trenches, please reach out. I'd love to connect.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Thank you for being here for this episode. Please and follow the podcast and go check out Krista over on LinkedIn. And then wherever you are watching this podcast, whether it's a clip or a full length video or audio, please subscribe. It really helps me. And you can also then leave comments as well so we can connect there. Thank you again for being here, and we will see you in the next episode. Bye, everybody.